I'll admit, I thought Robocop Rogue City looked pretty bad when it was first revealed. As a massive Robocop fan, it just didn't look right, or sound right. But you know what? I'm more or less happy with the game we got. It could certainly be better, I wish it were better, and we'll definitely get into what I don't like about it, but I really want to focus on what I love about it first, as a Robocop fan. This game is loaded with fan service, to a ridiculous degree. Robocop says all the catchphrases you expect him to, other popular phrases are said by other people, Lewis is there chewing her bubblegum, posters are advertising products from Robocop 2 all over the city, Delta City is advertised with the artwork from Robocop 3, people are driving the 6000 SUX, which is bizarrely called the SUX 6000 for some reason, but only sometimes.
He said he wanted the SUX 6000 we were repairing at Ben's.
Zooming in to aim shows the scan lines of Robocop's vision. He effortlessly walks through glass and at times walls. They even included the machines from the steel mill that dump wreckage if you shoot them. Wonderful detail. And there's some movie-like details in the gameplay that you may not notice. Sure, we can of course shoot guys in the dick, that never ever gets old. But when you play a first-person shooter like this, it's easy to fall into autopilot shoot for the head mode. And yeah, that is what you're doing a lot of the time, but in the movies, Robocop doesn't do that. He goes for body shots. So there are street punks with helmets on, leading you to go for those movie-style body shots. And later enemies have armored bodysuits, so you target their arms and legs. And I don't know, I just felt like this was making me play more like Robocop, and I liked it. One detail that I swear I'm the only person who's going to pick up on is the point system in the shooting range. What do you do here instinctually? You go for the bullseye, 3 points. But I was thinking back to the scene in the movie where Robocop was dismembering targets, and I thought, can I shoot off the arms? Yes, I can. But it turns out you get 1 point for doing that, so the most rewarding way to play the shooting range is dismembering the targets and finishing with a bullseye. They actually installed a point incentive for stylishly shooting targets, encouraging you to shoot them just like Robocop did. Absolutely brilliant. During combat, you get a lot of music from the movies, which, like Peter Weller being the voice of Robocop, greatly adds to the immersion. You gotta have those classic themes playing when you shoot people in the nuts. I really want to stress how well they've captured the feel of Robocop combat in this game. Regardless of what I go on to criticize in this title that's far from perfection, the essence of Robocop's combat is incredibly well done. I love that pieces of the story focus on the man, Alex Murphy. You sit down for psychological evaluations, answering questions about your feelings, about the current situation, even about politics. In the very first mission, an explosion goes off near Robocop that causes him to start suffering from re-emerging memories. He starts hearing his family, and then he gets to a hostage rescue and completely freezes up because he sees the hostage as his wife. It brings you back to that key moment between him and Emil from the first movie. No, not when he causes Emil to crash into the toxic waste disposal. I'm talking about the gas station, where he freezes up while arresting Emil because Emil said something that triggered a memory in Robocop. Several hallucinations happen during the game. Flashbacks to moments with his family, or imagining that his son is frightened of him upon seeing his new monstrous form. It's pretty well done. It's just unfortunate that the emotional elements of Rogue City don't really go anywhere. You don't feel the weight of the topic like you really should because too much is going on. And the whole mentoring a training partner thing seems to just disappear over time. For a larger breakdown of these issues, I want to recommend SkillUp's excellent review because he spends a lot of time on the story and themes. Many interactions with the common people show moments of Robocop's humanity, and you are given dialogue choices that affect how the people feel about you. I really enjoyed role-playing as Robocop in a lot of these. Normally I'm not a fan of these kinds of dialogue choices in storytelling, I find them tedious, but being such a big fan of Robocop and simply being happy to have the chance to play as him in the universe of the movies, I did my best to make the choice that I thought Alex Murphy would make in the moment. That meant showing kindness, mercy, and compassion towards people who came across as sincere and in need of help, or drawing a hard line against someone I thought was abusing their position or acting in blatant disrespect, even if it meant falling out of favor with them. I chose not to get involved in politics, as I personally felt Murphy would not want his public status being used as a marketing tool for any candidate's political campaign. And it was pretty cool to see how my decisions affected the world and the characters, and the future of Detroit and its people. When you're following the main quest or just exploring, you'll come across emergencies in the street, police lights in the distance creating a natural sense of curiosity. What's going on over there? It feels really authentic to the character that Robocop just sees a situation and says, I gotta go help, and then takes over the crisis alone. In a lot of ways, Rogue City feels like a day in the life of Robocop. You can bust people for public intoxication, give parking tickets. There's a part in the beginning where they need you to help at the front desk, taking complaints from the public, and I like this aspect. It's cool to think about what Robocop does in the in-between times. While I do feel that Robocop's behavior is a bit too on the mechanical side, something I talked about in my Robocop 2 video, this game is based in the Robocop 2 world, so I suppose that's fair. He's very cold in a lot of scenes, but he still has moments of expressiveness, enough to make me reasonably happy. I'm glad Peter Weller is back. This game wouldn't work nearly as well without him, but the performance doesn't come anywhere close to the movies. It feels more like he's just reading the lines given to him, not actually performing as Alex Murphy. I guess it's probably hard to dedicate yourself fully to the character when the story is full of multiple dialogue choices and character decisions.
It is irrelevant how comfortable I am. It helps me with perspective, but it also brings out things buried.
The voice effect is also not quite right, something about the reverberation. Actually, there's several sounds that just aren't right. While the footsteps sound great, the leg holster sound is off. And so is the Auto 9, which was the most important sound to nail. It may sound like a nitpick to most people, but the sound is iconic. It's like the pulse rifle from Aliens. It's the sound to get right if you make a game in the Aliens universe. It sounds good, it's just not the right sound. However, the guns themselves do feel really good to shoot, most importantly the Auto 9. The gun is iconic, and I'm glad it gets a lot of focus in this game. It's powerful, it holds a lot of ammo in the clip, and it's infinite, which is great for two reasons. One, it plays into that old, playful criticism of the original movie that Robocop just never runs out of ammo. And two, it makes the Auto 9 something you can always rely on. Robocop's primary weapon in the movies is the Auto 9. And while I am happy that you can find other weapons to experiment with, it always comes back to the Auto 9. This isn't a shooter where I'm looking to praise weapon variety, because it doesn't need it. There's a 2-weapon limit, something I don't normally like, but the pacing of combat, the slow movement of Robocop, and the additional abilities and options you have create the variety I'm looking for. You can grab enemies and throw them, insta-killing most, and doing good damage against those who are hit. You have a powerful melee strike that can be upgraded to refill ammo, you can pick up items in combat spaces to use to your advantage, gas cans, explosive barrels, computer monitors, chairs, tables, even giant dumpsters. And you just hurl them at people. Ever wanted to see Robocop throw a motorcycle at someone? Now you can. Further adding to combat variety are your unlockable skills. A shockwave that stuns everyone close to you, slow down time for a couple easy kills, and my favorite, the dash. I know it's weird to imagine slow-ass Robocop flying forward like this, but it greatly helps the flow of combat, giving you a quick way to take cover, and it leads to more melee opportunities. No, actually my favorite is not the dash, it's the ricochet shot. Just like Robocop 2, you can bounce bullets off walls for a headshot, and it's amazing every time. The combat is the best part of Rogue City. Developer Teon has truly captured the feeling of being Robocop against an army of criminals. It feels like you're acting out scenes in the movie, just with more video game options added into the combat. There is no jump ability, your sprint is a very light jog, this is not a mobility shooter. It feels a lot more like an arcade light gun shooter in a lot of ways because of your slow speed, being out in the open a lot and shooting so many people coming at you.
Oh, he shot me.
Characters don't spawn in, they run onto the screen like they would in one of those old arcade shooters like Lethal Enforcers or Area 51. That makes sense given this studio's first game was that awful on-the-rails Rambo game. You'll remember that from Angry Joe's classic video.
No!
It's over.
No! 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 No!
Sometimes you'll have some decent environmental interaction during combat, or an alternate approach to the fight. But sadly, I only came across one fight using destructible walls. It was amazing when I realized I was being shot at through this wall, and I just barged right through it, making my way around the heavy machine gunner at the end of the hall. That only happened once, and it's disappointing. The game really needed more of these moments where you have creative solutions. More running through walls, please. And while the gory headshots are definitely appreciated, I wish we had more effects, like people running around on fire, blowing out their kneecaps, stuff like that.
Oh my god!
And I cannot believe that there's no way to use the data spike as some kind of execution move. Huge missed opportunity there. It doesn't even happen in a cutscene, at least not one that I saw. The Ed 209 fights are very welcome, and they're exciting at first, because you're fighting Ed 209, but it's really just a giant bullet sponge. The fights aren't very interesting, and they take forever. At least I found a rocket launcher in one of them and killed it quickly. But listen, Taeon, if by any chance you're watching this video, I like your game. Some parts I like a lot, and I think you've made something worthy of the Robocop name. But I will never forgive you for not letting me pick up Ed 209's arm and firing it. Robocop vs. Terminator 100 years ago on the Genesis let me do that, and it was amazing. Not being able to fire it here? Man, I don't think I'll ever get over it. So disappointing. They've done a decent job at maintaining the humor of the movies. You'll hear some funny broadcasts on the radios you come across. There are some humorous character moments here and there, and this part here got the biggest laugh out of me. There's a mission where you have to team up with OCP forces to protect the OCP bank, and they have 3 Ed 209 units coming up the rear. If you don't pay attention, you'll miss it, but I just stood and watched these guys come in, and right away one of them falls down the fucking stairs and is taken out. Oh god, I love it. He still can't go down the stairs. I also have to praise this game's level design. They've authentically recreated and expanded upon iconic locations from the movies. I couldn't believe that I was able to walk around the OCP conference room. I was totally nerding out. And a lot of these places look really good. I'm not typically one for going on about graphics, but sometimes I was shocked by how great Rogue City looks, especially in the steel mill. My heart was racing as I walked about this area that has so much history, on the edge of my seat wondering if I would actually end up in the room where Murphy was killed. I think the only missing detail that bothered me was the glass panel that obscured Robocop's entrance in the first movie. That was a beautiful scene, and I was looking everywhere for this corridor and I just couldn't find it. While a lot of the levels do look very good, the immersion is often broken by the weird NPC behavior. I know this isn't a big budget game, so I'm not going to be too hard on it in this area, but it is pretty weird that some places have characters that realistically react to your presence or are found having conversations.
Who's there? Oh, it's only you.
But then there's just 3 dudes standing around staring at each other infinitely. And I found navigating downtown to be kind of frustrating because the map doesn't label any location. If I'm not following the quest marker and I want to check out a place from earlier, I don't remember how to get there and I just wander around town. The map should show the names of every business you can visit. Levels with a focus on action have well put together combat rooms that make you feel like you're acting out variations of the Coke Factory shootout, which is exactly what you want in a Robocop game. And not only are the combat spaces generally well put together, but there are many secret areas you'll only come across through exploration and paying good attention. The first thing I noticed was a note talking about the security equipment that a drug dealer had ordered for his office. It was a bill, and one item said desk button, so I went back to the desk where I had previously gotten the mission material, and sure enough, there was a little button on the side I hadn't noticed. It opened a gate with a lot of goodies. In the steel mill, you can find a note hidden away about a locomotive, and if you find it and power it up, it opens a whole new area of the map. I found all this exciting, and I spent a lot of extra time in the maps just looking for secrets. Because the more secrets you find, the more XP you'll get, which can be invested into your skill tree, which covers many areas. Not just damage, defense, and extra abilities, but things like your ability to influence conversations, crack locks on safes, recharge health from power stations. There's a lot to consider, but not so much as to be overwhelming, though a couple of them do feel kind of unnecessary. You'll also find boards to modify your Auto 9, and this is one of the coolest upgrade systems I've ever seen. Each board has a number of nodes that can be activated, giving bonuses to weapon damage, reducing spread, stuff like that. And some of the pathways power up special features like penetrating shots, a full auto mode, which is amazing, and an extra gore mode. A totally superficial upgrade, but one that you absolutely must use if you're a Robocop fan. I won't power up any board that doesn't have it. So what makes this interesting is how you power up each node. You'll see this upgrade system is very similar to Dead Space, but what makes it more involved is the penalty system. Activating certain pathways will send power to these penalty zones, which reduce all stats by a certain percentage. To avoid them, you have to insert the right shape of chip into each node to direct power in certain directions. And then some upgrades you might want actually require you to take a penalty, so you'll have to decide if it's worth it. Every chip also has a different percentage of buff, so powering up a weapon damage node, for example, the percentage on the chip determines how much of a buff that node will give me. It's a really cool system. I don't recall ever having seen something like this. Though I have to say that the longer the game went on, the less I cared about checking out the Auto 9 boards. And in the skill tree, I really just dumped everything into combat, defense, and engineering, which boosts the stats of the Auto 9 boards. I think it was just exhaustion that made me stop caring about upgrades, because Rogue City is a very long game, and honestly, too much of it is devoid of action. Fetch quests, talking to people, solving crimes, dream sections. I'm not saying they shouldn't be here. It's cool to see what Robocop does on a day-to-day basis. I think it helps make the game more than just shooty-shooty, but there's way too much of it. I just don't want to play a Robocop game where I go half an hour without a great action sequence, especially when a lot of what happens in that 30 minutes can be pretty boring. Given how slowly you walk, it takes minutes of empty walking to reach your next objective. For some reason, they take away your ability to dash when not in combat, which makes exploration in between missions slow down to an agonizing crawl sometimes. I'd actually be interested in installing a mod that bypasses this. And a good number of the combat encounters are over way too quickly. A minute and a half of shooting criminals and then 15 minutes of talking is just not the right pace. If this game were 8 hours instead of about 14, then it could have been way more focused on what it gets right, and I would actually want to replay it. Because right now, even though I liked Rogue City, its bloated nature puts me off from ever playing it again. Another big negative in all of this is the absence of a strong villain. You've got a corrupt OCP guy and a new crime boss, and they're both uncompelling. They don't make you hate them the way the original movie's villain did. I ultimately just didn't care about stopping them, though I did like the campy direction near the end of the game concerning the final battle. Now, like I said, this isn't a big budget title with 150 people in an office working for 4 years, so some dips in quality are to be expected. Character animations are lacking, NPCs can occasionally be a little glitchy, I had several crashes, usually happening repeatedly in the same area, The audio has issues like dialogue being too low in the mix, sometimes one character's voice is hard to hear or even impossible to hear over the music.
Why brains?
He would never say. Michael keeps his cards close to his chest.
Standing just outside of the shooting range causes all the gunshots to go silent. And the worst issue, for me, is the poor cinematography. Outside of a handful of cutscenes, every story moment is presented with dull, at times oddly framed static cameras, switching back and forth from A to B, while characters just stand still the entire time. There's no blocking. I'm not expecting God of War 2018 levels of cinematography and motion capture here, but this is incredibly boring, and it makes the game feel way cheaper than it actually is. And I think they could have dedicated more resources towards making these scenes more interesting to watch, if the game weren't so long. But really, for what it is, I enjoyed Rogue City more or less. My objectivity is out the window on this one because of how much fun I had simply role-playing as my favorite movie protagonist. If you don't have that emotional connection to the source material, if the nostalgia power isn't there for you, you'll have a very different experience. If this game had been half the length, with much better pacing, it would be easy to recommend to everyone, but it's not, so I can really only recommend it to big fans of the movies and the character. That's going to be it for me. Make sure you check out my video series talking about the Robocop movie trilogy, see if you can convince me to talk about the remake. I'll see you next time.